The South Korean team of experts that visited the Fukushima nuclear power plant last week is set to hold a briefing in the coming hour to provide details of their assessment of the safety of the stored wastewater before it gets released into the Pacific Ocean. While we await further results, let's turn to Mr. Shaun Burnie. He's a senior nuclear specialist at Greenpeace East Asia. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shaun. The South Korean delegation to the Fukushima nuclear power plant was able to see wastewater-related facilities with their own eyes, they say. How meaningful or successful do you think their trip was? I mean, what do you think will be included in the upcoming briefing?
Well, let's wait to see exactly what they explain at their press conference this morning. However, the reality is that spending a couple of days in Fukushima being briefed by TEPCO, you're not going to learn very much. And also in terms of what you're really investigating, we have to remain really skeptical that the scientists as part of this panel investigation are going to achieve very much. The problem is that Tokyo Electric, the owners of the nuclear plant themselves, really don't know what's going on at the Fukushima Daiichi plant. There are some fundamental issues here that, unfortunately, the South Korean panel is not really addressing. One of which is a comprehensive environmental assessment. That's not been done either by Tokyo Electric, by the Japanese government, by the IAEA, and it's not part of the South Korean government's panel's demand. That's fundamentally important to understand what will be the long-term impacts of these radioactive discharges.
Right. Let's see how much depth and clarity the report will have in the coming hour. Now, in the meantime, the IAEA is also in Fukushima this week, in fact, to inspect the wastewater there. How will their visit be different from the South Korean delegations? I mean, does the IAEA's visit mean Japan is soon to release contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean?
It's a very good question. The IAEA, since 2015, have effectively been encouraging Japan to actually begin the dumping of nuclear waste into the Pacific. That's because the IAEA supports nuclear power and has done since it was established in the 1950s and has really always been in favor of nuclear discharging from nuclear plants. So although the IAEA is saying it's going to be upholding international standards, those standards are drafted to allow the nuclear industry to dump nuclear waste, to discharge nuclear waste. So it's a very good question. The IAEA's report is almost certainly timed to give a sort of green light to the Japanese government. So we can expect that when the IAEA's report comes out, if it's the end of June, the radioactive discharges could begin as early as July.
Right, and also talks on seafood exposed to radioactivity have to be discussed. Right now, President Yoon Suk-yeol has said that those seafood will not be allowed into the country, but there are still lingering concerns that Japan's release of the wastewater may eventually mean affected seafood gets imported into the country. Shaun, is that so? I mean, what's your take on these worries?
So the World Trade Organization the appellate court held in support of Korea's position in 2019. That was a very unexpected but important ruling. That's not going to be overturned. What will have to happen is the Japanese government will continue to put pressure on the Korean government, and the Korean government at some point may have to bend to that Japanese pressure. That's a decision for, of course, the Korean government, and it's really important. The victims here are the fishing communities, both in Korea, but especially in Japan. And so this is a political game being played with people's lives, with their businesses. Actually, the only clear decision that should be taken is that these discharges should not happen. They're unlawful and unsafe.
Right. We are actually on the verge of seeing Japan actually release the water, though. But let's see how the report from the South Korean delegation and also another report from the IAEA turned out to be.
Thank you so much.
All right, Shaun, thank you so much for joining us this morning.